Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I. That's right. Your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I am Robcasting at you from the Robservations, and another name that I can put next to whatever that I guess I've given myself. Actually, you guys gave it to me because, well, it came from the imagination connoisseur community. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. Today is the day that was literally made up on this show, I don't know, I want to say a month ago, maybe? The idea of having a film festival. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across the 28 known galaxies, however you identify, you made possible the first annual, and yes, after much controversy, it is the first annual, not the inaugural. It is the first, and plus in an election year, I don't want to, the inaugural, I don't want to step on that word. So it is the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Entries open today. It's not quite up on the website yet, but you will be able to go to the website. You will be able to eventually, upload. You'll see the rules, and then you can upload your film. There is an entry fee. We are charging $25. That might be steep, but we need it because we're going to have to buy things like trophies for you people. I don't even know how many entries we're going to get, quite frankly. This is a great experiment, kind of like the USS Excelsior. We're going to see how we do. And really how we do is up to you imagination connoisseurs. A lot of people are telling me that they want to submit films. We shall see. There is a 2-month period of time. You can get off your tuchus, as my mom would say, and you can make a movie. You got 2 months to do it. I've already received a few. Including, guess what I saw? I saw what I guess the first entry into the film festival is, of course, director Patrick Keller and writer Dieter Bastian. We love Dieter, Patrick Keller, and Dieter Bastian's sequel. Already a sequel. We have a sequel. They've submitted their sequel to The Secret Exchange, The Secret Exchange 2, Broken Promises. And there is, I have to say, a star turn by young Mia Keller. Not to prejudice the jury, but yes. And throughout the next 2 months, every day I'm going to be announcing new things, new judges, new awards. There are cash prizes, there are trophies, and it's going to continue to be iterative, but I can announce our first judge. Our first judge is this gentleman who I've known for quite some time. It's been my great pleasure to know him. This is Ashley Edward Miller. He is a film and television writer, best known for writing, Agent Cody Banks. That's right. Thor, X-Men First Class. Most recently, Ashley served as a consulting producer for the second season of Lore on Amazon Prime, as well as the critically acclaimed fourth season of Black Sails on Stars. He also worked as a writer-producer on Fringe and Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. And Ashley is currently producing a new, as of yet unannounced, adult anime series for Netflix, which he also created, and he's also developing the television adaptation of the classic video game Myst. How about that? So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the first of many judges. We're going to have both professional judges, and there are a few imagination connoisseur judges that have been tapped to, they're going to pass judgment on you. I don't know what else to say. But again, because Dieter Bastian and Patrick Keller really made their first movie, that was what sort of inspired this whole thing. I figured, if you can be in Saarbrücken, Deutschland, and you can make a film, that was pretty fun. I liked it. Why couldn't everybody? And I think that's really, I'm always saying everybody should try making a movie once in their lives. And this is your opportunity. It's also, as we have pointed out many times, This is the first film festival that has ever been open to anyone who is not a human being, somebody who's not of this planet. You might be a humanoid, but the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival is just that. This is a film festival that is open, well, to the entire universe. And if you are an extraterrestrial of any kind and you would like to submit your film, you do not have to pay the $25 fee, the entrance fee. We will waive that fee. Of course, you have to provide us with enough credentials that proves that you are indeed who you say you are. Because after all, you can't just show up here and say, there's plenty of people that say they're extraterrestrials or Ramtha or, whatever sage from the 12th century that you want to believe you are. That's true. You can believe who am I to say? But we need some credentials. So if you are in fact an extraterrestrial and you have a film, maybe you can't even communicate, but hopefully the universal language of cinema will prove that you can somehow convey something to us. So we are the first film festival in the entire world, or the entire universe, at least in the western spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy, next to our small, unregarded yellow sun. We are the first in our local vicinity to open up a film festival, at least as far as I know. This could have happened, I don't know. It had happened before, it could happen again. It might have happened 10,000 years ago. I wouldn't know, in which case, prove me wrong. But until then, I think, yes, indeed, it is the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. I don't know how prestigious it is yet. I think we're going to find out based on our entries. I would hope that they're good. I'm very excited about it. I really am. I mean, I think this is something, if nothing else, it just shows you can just think stuff up and do it. Again, one of the great strengths of living in this day and age, we have the technology. You just think stuff up and do it. Now, part of my problem in life has always been saying, like, yes, let's do that, without realizing, oh, there's that much work involved. And there has been a lot of work involved. Luckily, I have Mike Bodden to help me out and do this. And I think it's going to be fun. We'll see what happens. We might get 2 entries. We might get 6 entries. But judging from the poster contest, which is over, by the way, the Imagination Connoisseur poster contest is completed. And we're going to actually have those posters up in a couple of days. We're going to compile everything and make sure we have everybody's folders. But I have to say this. This was something I maybe perhaps didn't anticipate, but something that I thought was pretty cool. Now, I'm not saying one way or another what this means, but I actually got a poster for a film for one of our entries into this film festival, even though he's going to say it's not an entry. It is. B.L. Alley. He made a film called The Trip. They went out for a slice, but came back with much more. So B.L. Alley is actually the first person to deliver us a poster for his entry. So I would say B.L. has stepped it up, people. Stepped it up. And by the way, there's other entries too. And they're coming fast and furious. So if you are going to enter a film, by all means, send your poster. We will put it up. We will showcase it. And that was pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. And I have to say, there's if I do say so myself, I think that B.L. Alley is currently in the running to win the Best Visual Effects Award so far, based on what I have seen. And there is, in fact, a cash prize, a Visual Effects Award, a sponsored award, which is pretty exciting. So you will see that. And as we move forward, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I'm excited. I've got a lot of cool judges lined up. It's going to be fun to share those judges with you as this all progresses. There's a lot of craziness happening, which I didn't expect. So I'm very proud of you, Imagination Connoisseurs. I hope you all take this to heart, and I expect to see films from every one of you it's very exciting. So the Drop Dead deadline is, of course, December 1st. And there's a couple of other information about the channel that Mike was going to send me before I went on, but just some business that we have to talk about the channel in general. But it's all very exciting. Also very exciting, tonight on Whining About Movies, we kick off our month-long celebration of horror films. Elizabeth and I are going to do all horror all month long, and we are kicking it off with Don Coscarelli's 1979 Phantasm, a particular favorite of mine. As people know, I've told the story about how my dad took me to see it the Saturday it was open at the Crossroads Theater, Crossroads Cinema, in Crossroads in Bellevue. So I'll talk about that more tonight, but we are going to be doing movies 3 times a week, horror films, and we're going to publish a schedule over the weekend. Tonight's Phantasm, it's October 1st. Tomorrow I haven't quite decided what we're going to do, but something, maybe something romantic, something very romantic, which could be a lot of fun. We shall see. It's going to be a mix of old and new, cult titles, mainstream titles. It's going to be fun, though, and I think that it'll be great. It's very exciting that this is actually all happening, as Penny Lane would say, or her friends would say. It's all happening, which is pretty cool. Now, let's see. The first letter that I want to get into today, because we have lots of letters to get into, and the first letter I would like to bring up, another favorite filmmaker of mine, even though we've never met. We've never met face to face, but I really enjoy her letters, and something tells me we would be the very best of friends. This comes from Just a Brown Girl. Hi, Rob. Happy Wednesday. Well, I missed Wednesday. Today's Thursday. It's a day after Wednesday, but happy Thursday to you, Just a Brown Girl. So I got my script coverage back. It only took a month. You did it again, by the way. You were just talking about how script coverage was empty because there's no directorial vision to show the suits what the story can be. So volumes of acquisitions, nay, great stories, languish on shelves of production companies, orphaned, misunderstood, a menagerie of dreams deferred. What Just a Brown Girl is talking about is, the other day, if you didn't see it on the show, I was talking about the fact that the problem with so much of Hollywood is most people only know properties that could be adapted as pieces of coverage. So no one ever actually reads the book. They just read the coverage and pass it around. So a fantastic book that can only really be understood. If you're breaking down a book into a plot, which is what... So for those of you who don't know, a piece of coverage are what a story analyst or a reader writes for all the managers and agents and actors and all over Hollywood. So there are people, I was one of them for years, where you're given either a screenplay or a novel and you write a piece of coverage on it, which is usually 2 pages, unless it runs a little long. And the first page is a synopsis of what it is you are talking about. A synopsis of a book, a synopsis of a screenplay in 1 page. So you cover the events, but the nuance is not there, the flavor is not there, the sizzle is not there. And then the next page is recommendations. So the problem is, what happens, you might have a great, phenomenal book. I was referring to Glenn Duncan's book, The Last Werewolf. I talked about Mark Piper's book, Lost Girls. I was talking about Hyperion by Dan Simmons. There's countless books that are languishing away on shelves because people only ever read the coverage. And the one thing that's happening, you get like Todd Grimson's book, Brand New Cherry Flavor, gets made because somebody remembers reading it back in the 90s going, we should do this. And they attach Rosa Salazar and, hey, let's make a movie or a TV series out of Brand New Cherry Flavor. By the way, that's actually the title of the book, Brand New Cherry Flavor. It's right up there. But very interesting. So what happens is, so many times great projects, they never get made because all anybody ever does is read the coverage, and that never does anything justice, especially stuff that's good. Just a Brown Girl goes on and says, but I digress. We will henceforth refer to this person as the reader. First of all, I received a 15-page report. Oh, did you send your book in to did you send your script in to somebody, a paid reader, just to do coverage for you? I can see that happening too. First of all, I received a 15-page report, and the first topic was, of course, typos. It is at this point that I notice the title of my script is the header of every page, spelled incorrectly. Okay, this could be two things. The reader could be making a point about first impressions by including a typo, but if they are, what should my impression be about the rest of the report? I'm really asking. I don't go into this process defensive. There's no way this script is perfect after only 3 drafts, so I'm going to be asking in earnest throughout this letter. Another note, my film starts with a cold open. The reader writes, features don't open that way. They open with fade in. Is it me, or, well, didn't the highest grossing film of all time, Endgame, have a cold open? It certainly did. I opened my last feature, Better Half, with a cold open, way before Endgame. Are these infractions really taught to readers? And why are elements like not having the mandatory fade in a disqualifying for a script? The reader also notes that the cold open doesn't end. Well, that's because at a page and a quarter long, that opening scene is designed to be a oneer. I get that the reader missed that. The reader was confused why some characters didn't react to heated conversations between 2 other characters. The answer is, as it is written in the script, the scene begins with 2 characters, and then 2 more characters enter, then 4 more enter, and the last 2 enter. The scene is long, and the characters accumulate because they arrive at the ceremony at different times. The entrances are in the script as they happen. The reader notes that for a while at the beginning, the movie seems to be centered about the soldier and not the prince. That was fair. I got the same critique on my last screenplay. The argument would be that the story needs to be about one protagonist, and I would insist that it is a dual lead until we get halfway in. The story is about 2 brothers until it is about the journey of one prince. Audiences don't need hand-holding anymore. A story can be about 2 people. A journey can be about 2 people. Who is the one protagonist of Parasite, and when was that clear to the audience? Is it really disqualifying if there is a dual lead that separates into leading role and strong supporting later in the film? The reader identified my inciting incident as being on page 30. It's on page 9. The reader identified the genre as science fiction. The script is a fantasy. I will take all the formatting notes the reader has to offer, but as far as the structure, I haven't gone point by point yet, but everything the reader is confused about, I can point to an answer in the script. Yes, of course, I know the story better than the reader, but it's right there in the script. Why is it not incumbent on readers to be able to try to see the movie? Is a script doomed if it falls on the desk of a reader who is not predisposed to liking the genre? I'm going to print this report out and go point by point and see if the problems the readers highlighted are addressed or not. I did find one scene that I could cut already, but mostly I feel like the reader just missed things because they were looking for a different story. The reader suggested I study Lord of the Rings because it's a journey film and an adaptation. Well, yes, Lord of the Rings is a journey film, but by what happens as early as page 8 in my script, the reader should understand that this story is dark, much closer to Game of Thrones in tone. My script details an impending ceremony at a temple in a wintry mountaintop, not a summertime birthday party in a grassy field. Who can't glean tone from juxtaposition? Sorry, that was defensive. I guess the biggest disappointment is that the reader did not point out anything I did well. The foundation of critique is pluses and minuses. The writer should use what you can, chuck what you can't, and pay attention if something comes up more than once. The reader should point out strengths, then get into the weeds of what needs work. I got nothing but radio silence on the good. If the reader says you have a global problem with pacing and structure, how do you know what to not change? By the way, the reader didn't say that, but they may as well have. Maybe that was the compliment, not calling the script complete crap. Sorry, defensive again. I had an actor friend read the first draft. The actor loved it. My actor friend gave me 1 page of notes. The reader gave me 15 pages of analysis and notes. Out of all that, there was only 1 occasion where they both had the same note. And I know why, and they're right. But that scene is an outlier. I don't think the reader got the script. The reader couldn't see the movie in the script. So, do I write the film that gets my movies made but shoot the film that I envision? And if I write the film that gets me money, how does that make me any different from other filmmakers? I tried very hard to write scenes as I intended to cut them. That might also be part of the problem. I already emailed the author about the report. In truth, it was what we both expected, useful but not revelatory. After all, if the reader gave it a consider, they won't get any more work out of it, would they? At minimum, it was worth the money to know. and I'm not really questioning the reader's motivations. The person is pretty reputable, and 15 pages is a lot of work, even if I do question the accuracy of the critique. I should know how my script could be received, and now I do. And now I know that my first instinctual plan of attack was also accurate. Now I can get back to work on what's next. That's it. Got a motor. Apologies for any incoherence or typos. I hope this letter wasn't too cranky, and I hope someone in the PGS finds it useful. That's why I share. Stay safe. My best to the misses and the girls. Your harbinger of hopefulness. Just a brown girl. P.S. I saw Tenet with Mom the other day. It was good. Loud. Confusing. Not a perfect film, but a great jumping off point for a franchise. I need to see it again. In IMAX. Go to the first showing of the day and sit all the way at the top row, and you should be fine. Armed with a mask and my own Clorox wipes, it didn't feel like a big risk at all. But we all must choose for ourselves. Later, dude. I love Just a Brown Girl. One day I hope to meet her. So this is very interesting. Clearly, there are, if you write a screenplay, and this is why I actually saved this letter, because I wanted to kick off I'm going to spend the next 2 months of Robservations talking about the filmmaking process whenever I can. And I think this letter is vital in that process. So as I've talked about, I think, unfortunately, one of the dumbest yet necessary, and unfortunately one of the great hurdles and obstacles of the entertainment business, if you want to work in movies, is the idea of readers. When I was a reader, I started as a reader, I was 22. 22 years old. Actually, no, 23. I was 23. Who am I? What are my credentials? I had none. I had no credentials. I'd worked in feature production and I'd gotten out of college. I went to college for 4 years. So that was it. Did I study story structure? Did I study, poetics, Aristotelian, whatever. Did I study any of that? I mean, no. I, however, was a lifelong studier, as I am now, of cinema. So when people got me as a reader, I did just what a brown girl wants to have somebody do. When I read a script, like Ridley Scott talked about, I would always approach a script with the attitude of, can this story, if this script were to be shot tomorrow, would it work? Now, I'd already read a lot of screenplays, both in film school and even before that, so I understood screenplay structure and screenplay form. I don't trust readers because, even when I was a reader, at one point I was reading for both CAA and William Morris. I had a whole connection of people. We would swap our coverage and rewrite our own we wouldn't even read the material. It was terrible. And that was a big problem. Now, there are story analysts you can pay to give you feedback on your script. So their job, if you're paying somebody to read your script, their job is to tell you what's wrong with it. You're paying them to tell you what's wrong with it. Now, here's the problem. Whenever you ask somebody, if you show somebody a movie and you ask the question, like, this is the problem I have with test screenings. So if you show somebody a movie and you ask, so what did you think of it? People are going to tell you what they thought of it. And usually they're going to tell you things. They might say, if they like you, your friends, oh, it's good. But if you ask them the question, well, what about it did you not like? You are now asking them to tell you something that they didn't like. So they're going to find something and they're going to tell you. And your first impulse is going to always be, well, damn it, you're going to want to explain yourself away. You're going to want to tell that person why they're wrong or how they didn't get it. Never, ever, ever defend yourself to a critic. Never. Never, never, never. As much as you want to, never do it. But you know what you do? You listen to them. You might, the initial impulse, you might say, whatever. Perfectly understandable. But listen to what they have to say. You will know whether or not some of what they say actually has merit. Great filmmakers know. It's part of being a great filmmaker. It's being able to listen to criticism and not just turn on your defenses, but consider it. What happens is if 5 people tell you the same thing, if 5 people have the same criticism, then there's a problem. Because when you a lot of people would say, well, I didn't become a writer for other people. I became a writer for myself. I'm like, yeah, fuck you. If you write something and you want somebody else to read it, you're a writer. And I hate it when people, I just write for myself. I hate that. No, you became a writer for your audience, to have an audience to read what you've written. Otherwise, why do it in the first place? For yourself, because you're going to pick it up 10 years from now and go, oh, well, maybe. I guess that's why people write in diaries, of course. But if you're writing a book or you're making a movie, you are presupposing an audience for your material. You are making work for an audience, which means you have an obligation to the audience to make what you're making work for an audience. And the only way you can tell if it works really, I mean, look, I'm a huge proponent of when you are making movies, you must show your film to people and get feedback. You must. Because you do get too close to things, and and look, if you make a comedy, there is nothing more helpful than sitting in a room with people, preferably an audience of people that don't all know you, and you watch a comedy and you can tell right away, does it work? Oh man, you feel it. You feel the laughs, and then you also feel the silences. And you know, the movie and the audience reaction will tell you everything you need to know. Does this work or not? And you'll know. You will know. So, but what's interesting with coverage is everybody's different, and you don't know what someone's level of experience is. So when you pay a story analyst, and I don't know if Justin Brown goes, she might have paid $100, she might have paid more, maybe less, I don't know. It's not an insubstantial chunk of change, and getting 15 pages back means that, okay, the reader definitely did their job. But, you know, and remember, it's not that reader's job. If you're paying somebody to be critical of you, don't ever expect that they're going to be nice. They're only going to tell you things that they think are wrong. Now, Just a Brown Girl has made a feature before. And indeed, she is coming at it from the perspective of she's written something that she plans to direct. Just like the project that I'm working on now, the screenplay that we have, I am rewriting it with the directorial flourishes I want in mind, but I've had to make them very apparent. That's part of the job. You have to make your piece of material. Your piece of material, how do you, the best screenwriters, the people that really, screenplay writing is a form. It's a form that can be mastered. But you have to understand a great many things to master screenplay form. It's very three-dimensional. And, you know, a lot of people want to put in camera directions. Never put in camera directions. Unless a camera direction is, like in my case, on the first page of my script, there's actually a camera in the scene that pushes into our main character. So it's in the scene. But, you know, that was one way as a reader. I'm like, oh, there's camera directions here. Toss it. It's not your job as a writer to put in camera directions. You can suggest, you can say things like "we see," meaning the audience sees. You can do things like that, but you don't write things like the camera pushes into an extreme close-up. It's not your job. That's the director's job, the cinematographer's job. Your job is to tell the story. And you know, I've always given people here's my simple screenwriting, Robert Burnett's simple screenwriting trick. If you're writing a screenplay, here it is. If you want to write, John walks into the room. That's fine. That conveys what happens. But it's always better if you make that visual. A screenplay should be telling you the story through visual images that you conjure up for your readers. So when you write a screenplay, you want to make sure that your audience, rather than give them camera directions, you want to invoke images in their mind through your writing. So John doesn't just walk into a room. How does John walk into a room? Does John bound into the room? Does he shuffle into the room? So don't just say John walks into a room. John shuffles into the room. Or John bounds into the room. Always give us something, and that's true of almost every single sentence of a screenplay. Not only are you conveying plot, but you're conveying action, and you're conveying motion and all kinds of things. So an actor can read that line and, oh, John shuffles into the room. That tells the actor something about John's state of mind. And if a director is reading your script, the director also gets something. Oh, so John, he's shuffling into the room because of what happened to him earlier that day, or maybe he's being bothered by something he anticipates. I mean, all of those things, and they collectively, on each and every page, they should invoke images always, and that's what you want a good script to do. Now, you also have to. There's a lot of other things, but that's just an easy rule, a rule of thumb. Now, rules are always made to be broken, but just remember, does your screenplay evoke anything? I'll give you an example of the script that I am working on now, that I am currently, because why not? If I'm talking out of my ass, I will. How good that doesn't do any good for you. So here is the name. I'm not going to tell you the name of the character, but here is the description of my main character. It's his name, perhaps 70, or at least looking it, sits in the waiting room like Philip Marlowe on the worst day of his life. Now, I did not write that line. The original writer of the script did, but I certainly am going to keep it because that's a great line. And that's it. That's the description of our character. Main character, perhaps 70, or at least looking it, sits in the waiting room like Philip Marlowe on the worst day of his life. Hopefully you know who Philip Marlowe is, but I think I love that line. I read that description. I'm like, that's one sentence, and you are given an image of your character. And I think that's important. Now, some people might want to spend a paragraph describing their character. You shouldn't do that. Come up with a visual image. Like me, I like this. I didn't write this, but sitting in the waiting room like Philip Marlowe on the worst day of his life. I mean, sure, there's going to be a reader that's going to be like, I don't get that. It's Philip Marlowe. Hopefully they'll look it up. Most readers won't. But for me, I'm going to keep it that way because I love it. But that's what you got to do. And that's how a great screenplay is written. Now, this doesn't cover plotting. Like, I don't mean plotting like plodding along. I mean plotting. The way you write action, there's a lot of other ways to do things, but I'm just giving you a general idea. And whenever I've told people that, screenwriters, up-and-coming screenwriters, I'm telling you, it changes their writing immeasurably. No one ever walks into a room. They tell me how they walk into a room. And that's true of everything. How do they feel about these things? Well, show us. Anyway, Just a Brown Girl, I feel your pain. I know what it's like to get things back like that. But I think it's great that you did that. But I think you have to make your screenplay. Unfortunately, you can't only write it for yourself as the director. Part of what's going to sell your project, and it's just a necessary evil, you have to make sure that your screenplay is able to get past 90% of the readers out there. And here's the thing. I will tell you, as a reader myself, it is apparent who knows how to write a screenplay and who doesn't. And you don't need 10 pages. It's a page. You can tell if somebody knows how to write a screenplay in a page. That's it. But, I usually 10 pages in, and it requires, you have to understand, storytelling. You have to understand how things are done. Just as an example, since I'm talking out of my ass, let's go and look at something else. Since it's not the topic of my conversation, why don't we look at a screenplay, since we're talking about screenplays, why don't we look at a screenplay for an upcoming movie? Would you like to do that? How about this? Let's look at the screenplay for Dune. Shall we? Because why not? Why shouldn't we? Dune. Current revisions by John Spates. Previous drafts by Eric Roth and Denis Villeneuve. September 24th, 2018. There's a quote on the front of the script. And that quote is... Hang on, let me quit this. The quote is, "The desert has no mercy. You adapt or you die." Uh-oh, see, music's playing. It's not good. Not good. You adapt or you die. I got to make sure that you can't hear music. That was Skyfall. Skyfall just started playing. Craziness there. But the desert has no mercy. You adapt or you die. Liet Kynes. That's how the script begins. Now here is the beginning of Dune. I think I might have read this before, but I'm just going to read you the beginning of the script. Here you go. Fade in. Bene Gesserit Temple Wall. We pan. See, it starts out with the camera direction. You can break it. We pan across an intricate mosaic in an ancient sanctuary. Graceful, arabesque calligraphy flows across the surface. A woman's voice speaks, aged and wise. Reverend Mother Mohiam. Once we let the machines think for us, and those machines enslaved us, bringing an age of tyranny and war. The mosaic's design acquires a mechanistic character, looming darkly over stylized human figures. Reverend Mother. When at last we threw them down, a new law was made. Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind. The towering mechanistic shapes dwindle to rubble, leaving a golden space in which human shapes reemerge. Reverend Mother. Schools were founded to elevate human thought. The Mentats, masters of mathematics and logic. The Spacing Guild, whose navigators see into the future to leap between the stars. And the Bene Gesserit, whose supreme knowledge of the body and mind guides human affairs. We see the Mentats with halos of pure mathematics, the Guild navigators with great ships looming overhead, the Bene Gesserit in black-robed ranks of women led by matriarchs. Reverend Mother. All three rely on the spice, a narcotic that enhances psychic gifts in those who possess them, and without it, our civilization would collapse. Rays of orange emerge in the mosaic, transforming the people they touch, elevating Mentats, navigators, and Bene Gesserit. We follow the rays back into a golden sphere, a desert planet. The spice has only one source, the desert planet we call Arrakis, known to its inhabitants as Dune. That wasn't really a good example of what I was talking about, but let's go on. Let's go to page 2. That was page 1. Page 2. Exterior, Arrakis, orbit. Arrakis looms large against the stars, a desert world. At the equator, a vast, rust-colored hurricane slowly churns. A stealth ship rockets toward the surface of the planet, a sleek two-seater with a darkened hull and no markings. A pilot sits in the forward seat, face hidden by a black glass visor. In the rear sits a commando in a high-tech cradle that is not quite a seat, a drop chute. Upper atmosphere. The ship plunges into the air, vapor screaming over the hull. Friction heats the shuddering fuselage to a red glow. From afar, we see the ship blazing down like a falling star. Below, a sea of sand dunes meets a rocky ridge, and the ship plunges toward the desert, terrifyingly fast. At the last moment, the pilot pulls up, crushing the commando with G-forces, skimming over the dunes 100 meters up. Ahead, the rocky ridge rushes to meet them. The pilot flashes the commando a series of hand signals. The commando replies by thumping the canopy with his fist. Ready. The pilot pulls up hard, aiming for the stratosphere, and as the ship climbs away, the drop chute opens. The commando falls free. No parachute. A dark figure in free fall. On the commando, as he touches his belt, activating a suspensor harness. A hum of power as the suspensors fight the forces of gravity. Exterior, Arrakis, Rock Ridge Day. The commando falls into view, decelerating fast, lands on his feet, taking the shock with his legs, pulls off his helmet. He is broad-shouldered and lean, clean-shaven, late 30s. He radiates quiet competence, even in this hellish place. He is Duncan Idaho. He strips off the pack off his back, takes out a rapier, and a dagger in scabbards, and hangs them on his belt. He scans the ridge, squinting in the sun, pulls a flask from his belt and takes a swallow of water, climbs out of sight. Behind him, the Dune Sea rolls to the horizon. Title, Dune. There you go, kids. That's the beginning of Dune. How that will translate into a movie, I don't know. We'll see, but there you go. There's that. There's the actual screenplay for, how much is this movie going to cost? Don't know, but there you go. This next letter comes from Joey Koch. Hey, Rob. Is your chat with one of the directors of The Wretched happening soon? It is. It's a week from today. Brett is coming on the show to talk about The Wretched, celebrating not only the month of Halloween, but his film, The Wretched. Wait, here it is. And he sent this to me. And by the way, we are giving out, he told me that we are going to be giving out copies of The Wretched on Blu-ray that he will sign. So that is exciting. That is going to be next Thursday. Joey Coke says, it's a pretty fun, family-friendly film. Watch right up until the last frame. Perfect horror for middle schoolers, which isn't meant as some backhanded compliment. But it's something I would have enjoyed sharing with my kids when they were younger. A little gore, no cheap jump scares, cool creature effects, occult mystery set on the lake resort in the woods of Michigan, with bits of Fright Night, Jennifer's Body, Blair Witch, Rear Window, and Disturbia sprinkled about with a nice, unreliable narrator twist to tickle the brain. Excellent summertime horror. Anyway, hope you managed to corral one of the brothers and Neil Marshall sometime, too. You know what? That's not a bad idea. I think I will maybe ask Neil Marshall to come on the show, talk about The Descent, and there's a great new Dog Soldiers coming out from Second Sight. So, Joey, that will be happening. By the way, you're going to recognize some pieces of music that you sent me soon on the show if you watch every day. I bet you thought I forgot about them, didn't you? But no, I didn't. Joey Coke sent me some music and quite liked it. So, yes, that will be happening next Thursday. This next letter comes from Eric Gant. Greetings, Rob. You know what I just realized? I was looking at... no, here it is. Sorry. Missed out. Eric Gant says, greetings, Rob. Like you and many members of the Post-Geek Singularity, I love Star Trek. But there's a property that holds a place in my heart even greater than Trek, and that property is the X-Men. You know, I love the X-Men too, and I consider the X-Men the Star Trek. The way I love Star Trek, I love X-Men in comic form. From the moment I first discovered the comics as a kid, Uncanny X-Men 162, in which our heroes bump heads with the Xenomorph-inspired Brood, great cover on that issue as well, Marvel's merry band of mutants have been my most cherished avenue of geeky escapism. Over the decades, I've followed them through good runs and bad runs, watching them tackle demons, giant robots, extra-dimensional foes like Mojo, extraterrestrial civilizations like the Shi'ar Empire, and even more mundane enemies like Count Dracula. Yeah, that's true. Bill Sienkiewicz drew that cover, too. But of all the myriad foes the X-Men have faced, the most terrifying to me have always been human beings. One of Marvel's earliest graphic novels was an X-Men book called God Loves, Man Kills, which is frickin' phenomenal. In it, we're introduced to a monstrous character named the Reverend William Stryker. His backstory. After learning that his newborn child is a mutant, Stryker murders his wife and the child and later becomes the leader of a militant anti-mutant group called the Purifiers. Stryker and his followers believe that mutants are an abomination in the eyes of God and a threat to the racial purity of mankind. Their endgame is literally mutant genocide. The story begins with Stryker's followers killing some mutant kids, which draws the attention of both Magneto and the X-Men. What follows is a genuinely disturbing plot involving a televised debate, kidnapping, and one of the earliest instances in which Magneto and the X-Men actually joined forces. Throughout the story, it's clear that Stryker and the Purifiers are the bad guys. There are no decent people on their side of the mutant debate. Another villain in the X-Men comics is Senator Robert Kelly, who was also introduced to the movie-going public in the first X-Men film. In both the film and the comics, Kelly is a politician who thrives on anti-mutant hysteria. Using thinly veiled rhetoric, he stokes the flames of fear and hatred, drawing throngs to his cause. His staunchest supporters include groups like Stryker's Purifiers, as well as those Americans who secretly support the Purifiers' beliefs. While he won't come out and say, "I hate mutants" on national television, we come to understand that Kelly would also never dream of publicly denouncing a group like the Purifiers. After all, he knows that a huge part of his support base... Hang on a second. When it gets hot, a little quirk of my computer is that the music just turns on. He would never dream of publicly denouncing a group like the Purifiers. After all, he knows that a huge part of his support base are anti-mutant, and alienating them could damage his career. As with the Purifiers, we can clearly see that Kelly is a bad guy. In the real world, when the audience sees things like this depicted in comics and films, I think we can all recognize them as horrific. One can't help but imagine that whenever Cyclops, Jean Grey, or any of our heroes sees someone waving a banner or wearing a hat supporting Senator Kelly, they can't help but feel angry or apprehensive. When we read the comics and watch the films, we look at stuff like this and say to ourselves, that's horrible. This brings me to a question I'd like to pose to the Post-Geek Singularity. If we can agree that these fictional portrayals of xenophobia, hate-mongering, and intolerance are despicable, how are we able to so easily overlook them in real life? Why is it that so many of us can accept, in some cases, enthusiastically embrace these ideas? I'm not trying to cast judgment on anyone. I'm genuinely curious. Am I seeing a boogeyman where none actually exists? Or are others somehow unable to recognize the boogeyman standing in front of them? Thank you for taking the time to read my letter, and my apologies for bringing up politics. Did you bring up politics? Aren't we talking about the X-Men? I mean, remember, when you're talking about comic books, people always say, can't we go back to talking about comic books instead of politics? So how could you possibly be talking about politics when you're talking about God Loves, Man Kills? That's just an X-Men graphic novel, isn't it? This is just a question that's been nagging me for several years now. Live long and prosper, Eric. Well, Eric, again, a great letter. Every time I hear from you, it's a good day. Yeah. I've never understood why. I mean, the X-Men is an incredibly political comic. It always has been, ever since Chris Claremont took over, and indeed when the X-Men were first created. There's politics involved in all of Kirby and Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and all the great Marvel creators. There was always politics involved. There was politics involved in the creation of Superman. Two immigrant kids trying to deal with their immigrant experience. I've never understood it. I really don't get why people don't understand that all the great stories are political. They're illuminating the human condition. They're telling us how can we be better. Look at these things. I mean, the X-Men is one of the most overtly political comics and I love the X-Men. But God Loves, Man Kills, man. That I remember reading that when I was a kid when it first came. What did it come out in '82? Let's find out, shall we? I think it was it '82? Maybe it was earlier. God Loves, Man Kills, right? Let's see. X-Men graphic novel number 5, God Loves, Man Kills. Let's look up Wikipedia just because it'll be interesting. But bam, it is '82. God Loves, Man Kills is an original graphic novel published in 1982 by Marvel Comics, starring their popular superhero team, the X-Men. It was written by Chris Claremont and illustrated by Brent Anderson. The book served as a primary inspiration for the film X2, which saw Claremont return to write the novelization. So there you go. Love God Loves, Man Kills. And yeah, I think they should have leaned into it more. Of course, it's pretty distasteful and not very... If you want to go to the movies and see a superhero film, it's tough. I mean, they did... Stryker was definitely in there. Speaking of that, here's an interesting... here's a letter that's going to be Elizabeth's... let's see, XL or XXL. Elizabeth apparently is at Target, and she just said, what size shirt do you wear? Here's a letter that is overtly political. And people don't like when I talk politics, which I don't understand because all of this stuff is... What number? I'm going to say, I'm live? I'm live? Anyway, so I'm telling her that. So this letter comes from William Thomas Everall. Oh, she says, yes, okay, well, I'm talking about you. Okay, fine. Rude. Hello, Rob. It's been a while since I've sent in a letter. I just wanted to address an issue I keep hearing about. Now, mind you, I've never been a racist or had ill will. Oh, well. Oh, okay. Hang on. So I just wanted to address an issue I keep hearing about. Now, mind you, I've never been a racist or had ill will towards anyone. And once again, the music is playing. I'll just pause it and leave it up. I just wanted to address an issue I keep hearing about. Now, mind you, I've never been a racist or had ill will towards anyone. I'm a pacifist, and I'm now disabled. But let's get to the point of a common trend in media. Media hosts say being a white male grants you privileges. I grew up with no electricity or running water in Alaska. We were so poor, we tried eating dandelion salad and cooking chicken feed to make popcorn. It doesn't work, by the way. Why would you cook chicken feed to make popcorn? So there were many starving days until I learned to hunt. Not something I was proud of, but at 11, I could feed my family rabbits. With this in mind, later, after I finished high school, I got a job and paid my way through college. I tried to get a loan, but my family was so poor I couldn't. By the way, I never did a damn thing with the sociology degree I got. I made more managing restaurants. I started as a dishwasher. So people constantly saying white people have all the privilege sort of makes me mad. Not on a racial view of my wife's country, the Philippines. Not on a racial view. My wife's country, the Philippines, has to pay for school and kids want to go. Some can't afford it, so get no education. But I'm sure there are more out there like me who have $5 in their wallet and wonder about next month's rent or less. So to put them all in one category as wealthy white people who get everything is insane to me. If you did, kudos to you. I wish they had adopted me. I'm not mad at anyone. I just think blaming anyone based on just their race is sort of ignorant. I hope you don't take offense to this, but it's been in the media all the time, and people keep saying it. On the plus side, working my cooking website for the new. On the plus side, I'm still working on my cooking website for the newly disabled. Thanks for reading, William. Here's something that was written to me also that I'm going to read as well. I'm not sure if this fits on Robservations or not. I don't think it does. But I know it's a subject you like to talk about, so I'm sending it along. Here's the thing I think is worth getting across. By the way, this is a new letter. It's a counterpoint. White privilege doesn't mean white wealth. And it doesn't mean that all people are racist. The unfortunate thing about the way this country has become polarized about race and racism is that nobody is really listening closely to what's being said, or seems to be interested in understanding the nuance behind the arguments and complaints. The word racism has become so negatively tinged today that using it immediately turns off half the people in a conversation. Here's what's important to understand. Every society in history has had its racial and social biases. We can't help it. It's part of the human condition, and a significant factor in how Homo sapiens evolved and didn't get eaten by predators or killed by Neanderthals. Biases help make understanding and decision-making faster, just like biases on tape help deliver a signal more efficiently. But those biases also color the message they carry. When a human sees something that looks different from normal, or hears a sound that he doesn't quite recognize as familiar, those biases emerge and influence behavior. I have to turn this off again because it's of the heat. Those biases also color the message they carry. When a human sees something that looks different from normal or hears a sound that it doesn't quite recognize as familiar, those biases emerge and influence behavior. When we meet someone with a different skin tone than our tribe, it's natural to be more wary. When we hear someone speak with an accent, it's natural to make assumptions based on what we think we know about that culture. Here's the thing, though. Just because it's a natural thing humans do doesn't make it right. It's vitally important the people learn how to recognize the bias that exists in the culture as it relates to those people who are different from us. Why? Because nobody likes to be marginalized. This is really getting annoying. Because nobody likes to be marginalized, and frankly, nobody deserves to be marginalized. That truth holds whether we're talking about a black teenager from Compton or a red hat wearing farmer from Kentucky. The immigrant mother from a Muslim country in the Middle East doesn't deserve to be marginalized because of her headscarf or accent, any more than a single mom with her 2 kids living in a trailer court. We're all better than this. If we can recognize the bias that surrounds us, we can check our behavior before we unintentionally marginalize others. I don't know why this keeps happening. I'm getting phone calls, and it's just, this is really hard. Really, really difficult. I feel like I'm trying to read this important stuff, and I'm getting barraged. We're better than all this. If we can recognize the bias that surrounds us, we can check our behavior before we unintentionally, as I'm trying to turn this off yet again. We're better than this. If we can recognize the bias that surrounds us, we can check our behavior before we unintentionally marginalize others. And if we think about how much our world is awash in biases, it becomes easier to understand the concept of white privilege and why it's a thing. Privilege means one person can do things without facing the barriers others do when they try. Whether it's something significant, like having your company provide a car that you need for work but can use on the weekend, is something less significant, like your ability to email your shopping list to your spouse from your computer at work. Those are privileges you have because of your job that others can't enjoy because they don't work where you do. White privilege isn't a whole lot different. How many of us with lighter colored skin tones feel wary about walking into a bank to take out a loan, or wonder if we're going to survive a traffic stop because of the way we're dressed? This is true no matter the race or cultural identity of the person involved. A light-skinned person of Syrian descent has a much easier time being accepted than a more olive or darker-toned person whose roots go back to the Middle East. The same is true with those of African or Caribbean roots, Hispanic backgrounds, etc. Over the past 400 years, the American culture has been built to allow those who look like our civic leaders to enjoy the privileges of citizenship, which, by the way, is the way every civilization has worked forever. So it's not just an American thing. As a result, in this country, if you're white, you face fewer barriers to success than if you're not. That's not to say you still can't have a hard time. Screw up, die poor. You still can. You still can succeed at failing if you're white. But if you do have a hard time, screw up or die poor, it's not because you're white. But here's the beauty of the situation. If people, especially white males, learn to recognize and acknowledge social and racial bias, we can think about how it affects us. And racial bias. And we can learn to recognize and acknowledge these social and racial biases. And we can think about how it affects us and make simple adjustments to behavior to make sure that those around us are treated respectfully. Man, it's really hot in here. That's why it does that. Likewise, it's important for those who are not the beneficiaries of this privilege to understand the blind spot created by the social and cultural bias. I'm not saying they should excuse bad behavior because of it, but it's important. But it's important to understand the role this bias can play on behavior, and that as a result, not all prejudicial behavior is racist, which implies intentional decisions and actions based on stereotypes, but rather influenced by cultural, either racial, cultural, or sexual bias. That's not an excuse for bad behavior. But rather than getting angry at a person making the bad decision, it might be more effective to call their attention to the biases that are driving that behavior and giving them a chance to learn and correct it. Just accusing someone of being a racist or a misogynist or accusing them to be anything else isn't going to get you anywhere. All that will do is shut down the conversation. But calling a person's attention to his or her discomfort can help break through that bias, because nobody wants to be marginalized. Just a thought. That was written by our moderator, Mike Bodden, which I thought was pretty good as a response to that. Look, I agree. You know, what's really interesting is, for the very first time, when I went to South Korea in 2018, I was a tall white dude from America who has a pretty loud voice. And I was very aware, every place that I went, I was being stared at, looked at, judged. I mean, I never felt that before in my life. And it was very curious. There was no white privilege. Let me tell you, there was no white privilege in South Korea. And it was interesting, you know, and I understood it. Like, I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm not a Korean. And most of the people I see walking down the street, they're if I went to a tourist location, then I would see people that weren't Korean. But, you know, I was in Seoul and mostly predominantly, even the hotel that I was at, most of the people in the hotel were of Asian descent as well. And it was very interesting. It was for the very first time, I really gleaned some insight that I didn't have before. I'm like, oh, because most of the places that I traveled in my life, I mean, I've been to Israel, but I've mostly been through westernized countries and also in New Zealand and Australia and things like that. And it was pretty crazy. But I think, you know, that's why we have to listen to other people, you know, and I'm a big fan of everybody. I like everybody. And I like hearing everybody's story. But, you know, rather than getting angry, you know, we have all these people that get angry about hearing, why not just listen? and consider. So I want to thank the letter writers for writing in, and I want to thank Mike for rebutting that letter in a very cogent way. I think that's that's good. So I want to thank William Everall for writing in, and I also want to thank Mike for writing in. But William, yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing. Here's another thing that I've always thought was sort of strange. Like, my experience in the world, working in Hollywood, my status as a white male has not helped me. It has been a long, horrible, horrific slog through the entertainment business for 32 years. It's been bad. And the thing is, when I get up in the morning, I'm not thinking about other people, to be honest, other than my immediate vicinity. I'm thinking about the projects I have going on. I'm thinking about what I need to do. I'm thinking about this show. I'm thinking about talking to you guys and girls and gentle people and all of that. And for the most part, what's been odd during this quarantine is I like people. I like people of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds. I'll talk to anybody. I like talking to people everywhere. I mean, I miss when I was going into John Campia's doing the show, I would Uber down there or take a Lyft. I really enjoyed talking to whoever was my Lyft driver. And I haven't done that, in a long time. But I miss it. I miss people, man. I miss talking to people. I miss experiencing people. Because I mean, like I said, I really do believe that every single person you meet has a story to tell you haven't heard. And all you have to do is listen. I believe that. Not only do I believe that, I know that it is empirically true, because every single person does have a story to tell, and and I think that's something that I know that moves. It moves beyond race. It moves beyond sexuality. It moves beyond gender. It moves beyond economic wherewithal. Every single person has a story to tell. Every single person. And that's kind of how I approach my life, that every single person that I meet has something to say that I don't know, that I haven't heard. Every single person. And, and I'm not a story vampire. Just because someone tells me a story, I don't discard them and throw them away. I mean, I'm not going to suck all of their stories out and leave a desiccated husk that I toss over my shoulder. Because you know what's going to happen when somebody tells me a story, you know what's going to happen with them? They're going to go off and they're going to have another story to tell me the next time I see them. Stories are endless. They're constantly replenishing themselves, and there's always another one to tell. So, but interesting. I know everyone's like, don't get political. I'm not getting political. I don't think it's political to find value in human beings. All human beings. I don't think it's political, and that is the position of this channel, and it's the position of me. That human beings are our most precious resource. There's only one of each one of us. So, but I understand. I mean, we all grow up, like Mike eloquently wrote, we all grow up with these biases. Let's put them aside. Let's just put them aside. Like, don't hate people for their superficiality. Hate people because they deserve to be hated. Wait till people prove their douchebaggery or their evilness or don't judge somebody based on the color of their skin or the way they look. Don't do that. Let them earn your hatred. Don't just hate somebody to hate. You're giving somebody too much power over you. You can't hate somebody. You should never hate somebody because of they look different than you. That's not fair. Wait till they've earned your hatred. Save hatred for then. And I'll tell you something. If you do that, it doesn't matter what color people are. You'll get rid of your racial biases really quickly. Hate assholes instead. I'm being flippant, but kind of. I think there's a little bit of truth in that. But, I'd rather like people. Guess who I have a letter from, everyone? Yes, if you said Willow Yang, you'd be correct. Willow Yang is here, ladies and gentlemen, and she wrote, I have to pronounce more Chinese names I can't pronounce. Greetings, Rob. You've recently done a show discussing the adaptation of Liu Cixin, The Three-Body Problem that Benioff and Weiss are developing. I haven't read the novels myself, but as you've stated, they're set in China and deal with the various important aspects of Chinese history, such as the Cultural Revolution. Hearing this, I cannot help but think that there will inevitably be some dispute over whether Benioff and Wise are the right people to be creating a series that's apparently steeped in Chinese culture and history. Just several days earlier, Lulu Wang has taken to Twitter to voice her dissent over the biopic that's being developed of the acclaimed Chinese pianist Lang Lang, stating that she doesn't believe that people hired for the movie are the artists to grapple with the cultural specifics of Northeast China, where Lang Lang and my family are from. Of course, she was referring to the director and producer Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, and probably also the writers Kieran and Michelle Mulroney. I have mixed feelings about this. First and foremost, I personally did not like Lulu Wang's actions. I didn't like that she went online and publicly called people out. She has acknowledged that there are many artists whom she admires involved in the project, which does include Lang Lang himself as the executive producer. Do they appreciate her going after their film? I just think that there are better ways for her to express her concerns. Personally, I think her behavior does nothing but create animosity and isn't really conducive to generating civil discourse. Having said that, though, I don't think it's wrong either to question whether someone who's outside of a certain culture can tell a story about that culture as authentically. Of course, as with the question over what types of characters an actor should be allowed to portray, people will inevitably argue something along the lines of, then Steven Spielberg shouldn't make E.T. because he's a human and wouldn't know anything about aliens. Personally, I think that's a straw man's argument. While I do believe in the existence of extraterrestrials, we haven't, unless you believe in conspiracy theories, yet encountered any. Hopefully, the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival might alleviate that. We might actually get an entry from an extraterrestrial, Willow. Until we get visited by aliens and they take us to task for misappropriating their cultures, we're just not going to keep on using our imaginations. We're just going to have to keep on using our imaginations. The same cannot be said for many different human cultures, however, for which we do have living individuals who can and have spoken out about misrepresentation and inaccurate and sometimes even harmful depictions and stereotypes. I loved Lulu Wang's The Farewell. The movie connected with me. I was floored by how authentic it was, how similar it was to my own experiences as a Chinese immigrant who's caught between two different cultures. It was such a personal story that I'm not sure if someone who hadn't been through the experience would have been able to capture the subtleties and nuances in all of the conversations and character relationships that made the film feel so shockingly real. Now, I'm certainly not saying that an Academy Award-winning filmmaker like Ron Howard would have made a bad movie if he'd been given the story. However, I do wonder if The Farewell would have been as authentic, would have resonated with me as much had it been made by someone other than Lulu Wang. Also, she's a woman, too. And she was capturing the experience of what it's like to be a woman in that culture, which is an additional layer. Having said all that, however, I do have to ultimately disagree with Lulu Wang's insinuation that the films about Chinese characters should only be made by Chinese filmmakers. Wang pointed to Mulan as an example of what happens when a predominantly white crew working behind the camera creates a Chinese movie. I still have not seen Mulan. I'm too cheap to pay the $30, probably $40 in Canadian, to watch a film that will eventually be free on Disney+. I do know that Mulan has received criticism for taking liberties with the costuming as well as making Qi a magical power, which is not what it is in traditional Chinese medicine. While all of these are definitely legitimate points of contention, I also think that because Mulan is an American-made movie about a foreign culture, it is receiving more scrutiny. I've watched lots of wuxia series and historical dramas about the different emperors, and Chinese filmmakers do often like to play fast and loose with history and culture in order to appeal to more modern sensibilities. I think it's likely that a director like Zhang Yimou, who my parents cannot stand because they think his films are all a bunch of gobbledygook, would have also taken numerous liberties and exoticized Chinese culture for the Western audience if he'd been hired for Mulan instead of Nicky Caro. Furthermore, it's obvious that a lot of different Western cultures also get butchered in film. The Scots didn't start wearing kilts until around the 16th century, several hundred years after the events of Braveheart. Spartans apparently wore full armor into battle, not leather thongs, but seriously, what blind moron would want to cover up all those hard abs and pecs in the movie 300? It would be a crime against art, in my opinion. On a broader level, however, I'm just against the idea of restricting artists to telling only stories about their own community. Now, I do think that a filmmaker who's more familiar with the culture would probably have some advantages, would probably bring more to the plate than someone who isn't. Furthermore, I can understand concerns that Lulu Wang may have had about Chinese American filmmakers being denied job opportunities. However, her implication that white filmmakers are by default unqualified to make a movie about a Chinese person is, I think, a little dangerous, because the reverse logic can also be applied. Ong Lee has won 2 Academy Awards for directing Brokeback Mountain and Life of Pi. I'd hazard a guess that Lulu Wang wouldn't say that Ong Lee was the wrong person to make those 2 movies because he didn't hail from the same cultural backgrounds as the main characters and hence wouldn't be able to comprehend the subject matter. And I'm sure that Wang herself wouldn't want to be limited to only telling stories about Chinese immigrants either. Telling people to stay in their own lanes is, I think, a disservice to everyone, including and especially artists from minority backgrounds. In conclusion, I do think that Lulu Wang has some valid concerns about the biopic on Lang Lang, and there are certainly discussions to be had over the subject. However, I don't think that calling people out online is a good way to start a constructive debate. And ultimately, as much as I might admire her as a storyteller and the authenticity she has brought to The Farewell, I just do not agree with her on this matter. I do not believe that a white person should be barred from telling a story about a Chinese character any more than I think a Chinese person should be barred from telling a story about a white character. I do realize that right now we still have a lot of problems in our country that we need to resolve. What I do hope will happen, though, is that eventually we will reach a point where nobody gives a second thought to what a person's race, gender, or sexual preferences might be because such discrimination no longer exists in our society. And I just do not believe that segregating people into their own identity groups is the right way to go about achieving this. Best regards, Willow. Here. Once again, you knock it out of the park, Willow. Let me read that again. I just do not believe that segregating people into their own identity groups is the right way to go about achieving this. I cannot agree with you more, Willow. We seem to be living, everybody is segregating themselves into groups, whether they're political groups, whether they're groups, sexuality, gender, identity, whatever. I hate that about our modern age. I've always loved being involved in projects that have all kinds of people. That's one of the great things I like about working in movie sets. You get all kinds of people on movie sets. And it's fantastic. And I love it. And I can't stand that our modern society... By the way, this really wasn't happening as much as it's happening now. 10 years ago it wasn't this way. Everybody dividing themselves up and putting themselves in their teams or their tribes or whatever. It's antithetical to my way of or my belief system. And what a fantastic letter you have written. And I want to thank you for that. And after a Willow Yang letter, I gotta jump over to the chat. I hope everybody's not freaking out and getting all political and angry with me, because they might be, and I apologize for that. Willow's always here. I always appreciate Willow always fires in that first chat. I'm someone who liked the Star Wars prequels, even Attack of the Clones. Although I found the Anakin Padme romance awful, my biggest question, though, is, did Ilan Sleaze-Begano actually go home and rethink his life? How long does a Jedi mind trick last? Ilan Sleaze-Begano was trying to sell death sticks in the bowels of Coruscant. That's hilarious, Willow. Yeah, I think one of the problems with modern Star Wars is that name, Ilan Sleaze-Begano. Yeah, not good. Not good. Ross Gecko sends in a super chat and says, "This may be none of my business, and it's okay if you say so, but wondering if you can make a living with your channel." Huh. It depends. Definitely it augments, but yeah, it depends. Can you make... Look, I'll tell you this. If I had 250,000 subscribers, even if I didn't do live videos and made like 10-minute videos that people watched, you can absolutely make. I can tell you, for those of you who don't know, basically you make $1,000 for every million views you make on YouTube. That's your base. So for every million views, you basically make $1,000. Most of the videos on this show, just as an example, get between 3,000 and 6,000 views. So do the math. I mean, obviously, tips, and super chats help. But if there are channels like I follow, like the Stradman. I like the Stradman. If you want a channel that always put a smile on your face, watch the Stradman. It's an automotive channel. He's 26 years old and he owns a Bugatti Veyron. You know, and I like to watch automotive YouTube because I like to see the cars. But you got these young kids driving a $500,000 car. I get it. But if you look at their videos, there's something called the CPM on YouTube. And a CPM is basically how much your videos make based on the demographics and what your subject matter is. My CPM in the United States is over 9 now. So that means for every million views, I would make $9,000. I could make $9,000. Now, if I had 250,000 subscribers or I put out videos, like there are some YouTubers that put out videos that get 500,000, a million views, and they'll do that 3 times a week. You're pulling down serious money. I mean, you're making tens of thousands of dollars a month. Now, of that CPM, of that money, YouTube takes half. They take 50% of that. So if my CPM is 9, I make a video that gets a million views, I would get there's $9,000 gross, but I would get $4,500 net back. Still pretty good. So if you have a YouTube channel that gets up to that level, you're making serious bank. Like Davey504, another YouTuber that I watch, his whole shtick is bass guitar. He makes 10 minutes. If you look, you have to make videos that are over 10 minutes. And he puts out a video, it gets 500,000 views. I don't know what his CPM is, but you do that a couple of times a week, 3 or 4 times a week, man. If you have a CPM of 9, 10, there are people that do economic channels on YouTube with CPMs that are above 50. So they get $50,000 for a million views, but they're doing, stock trading and videos like that. You can absolutely make a living. On this channel, my viewership is small. So I do this. It augments income, but I can't make a living off this channel. Not only this channel. That's why I do other things. That's why I work on net. That's why I have day jobs. But I do this. I'm not going to lie. I mean, this augments the income. It relieves the pressure. But it would be nice to be a YouTube. And also, I don't do enough on this channel. Like, if I wanted to, for instance, I could break each show up into 10-minute chunks or each letter, and that's I could do that and make a lot more money. But it's just a lot more work, and I would do more of that if I didn't have so many other things. Like right now, between the film festival, between Netflix, Tango Shalom is beginning its festival run. So like I'm up till 3 and 4 in the morning doing stuff for all these various different things. I mean, I'm constantly working on something, and then I'm doing the animatic for the film and the script rewrites, and so I'm usually doing 3 or 4 things a day in addition to YouTube. And like when I have multiple shows, it gets tough. But that's the only way. I've got to be doing 10,000 different things in order to make money, to be honest. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, my wife was the guiding force in the Antelope Valley behind the very special arts festival in the 80s and 90s, and there are posters for each year. And the first one says, the first annual very special arts festival. So, yes, Anonymous, you tell your wife, thank you for that. I like that. And then you were doing it for 2 decades. I like that. Brendan Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, Rob, I know you're a big fan of The Big Short, but what do you think of its little brother Margin Call? Underrated gem with a scene-stealing turn by Jeremy Irons. I like Margin Call a lot, but I think the reason I like but Margin Call is more, it's a fictional narrative, really. But I love anything to do with finance and all that. But The Big Short is more. There's just something about it between all the different characters and the editorial, the filmmaking, the sensibility behind it. But I do like Margin Call a lot. I think it's good. Stubble McShave says, only 74 episodes until episode 600. What are your plans for the 10-hour stream? Thanks a lot, bruh. What am I I don't know. I'm making this up as I go. I better start doing interviews now. Star Wars Rock sends in a tip and says, hi, Rob. As you're talking about making movies in today's show, I have a question. What if you haven't been to university or film school to actually study filmmaking and don't have a movie under your belt? Then what happens? You don't even know how to write a script. Well, that's true, but there are, I think the best way, there's a lot of artists in the world that have been self-taught. A lot of writers have been self-taught. All you need to do is start going. There's plenty of books. You don't have to go to film school or even college to learn about anything. I mean, you could, if you wanted to learn about screenwriting, you could sit there and Google, well, just as an example, let's see. Let's do it. Learning how to be a screenwriter. Right? Let's see how much comes up. Learning how to be a screenwriter. Well, there's online filming classes, so there's a video that pops up that says learn screenwriting in 4 steps. How to learn screenwriting in 4 steps is a YouTube show. How to learn screenwriting on my own on Quora. How to write a screenplay, the New York Film Academy. How to become a paid screenwriter in 2020, a step-by-step guide. Learn screenwriting lessons by reading screenplays. Introduction to screenwriting. It's amazing. And it's got all these books. So the thing that I think that's amazing about the modern age, the way we are living now, is you can find it. You don't have to go to college. You can find out anything you want. Become self-taught. I mean, I think there's a lot of people. You see a lot of people that learn instruments online. I think there's no. The real question is, what are you hoping to achieve? Are you hoping to write a screenplay and sell it? That is a very difficult thing to do, but you can certainly learn the art of screenwriting. I think the art of screenwriting helps you learn a lot of things, really. Just Plain Steve sends in a super chat. Thank you, Just Plain Steve. I'm sure a quick search could answer this, but I thought I'd ask. I'd ask you because of your first-hand knowledge of film. Is Superman Returns intended to be a sequel to the Christopher Reeve films? I've always seen it as such. I think absolutely it is. It is maybe not a direct, it's not an exact sequel, but it's certainly a thematic sequel at least. But yes, it's supposed to be a continuation of the Donner films or build off that. Simon sends in 2 tips and he says, Rob, I respect you. If you don't mind, I'd like to vent if you'll allow me. I am a person of color and I see everyone as human. Me too. I have to say that the racism in this country makes me sick and I'm tired of it. I feel like I want to punch that orange man that only paid $750 in taxes in the White House. I want to punch Brooks Russell Heatherly. No BS. My work life. Oh, wait, hang on a second. No BS, a YouTube channel. Oh, I don't know who Brooks Russell is. Who can only praise Trump and is always bashing anything other than Republicans. Yeah, I feel your pain, Simon. I think it comes down to the fact that, again, discourse, discussion. I mean, everybody acts like you're on the same team. I can't believe, I don't understand. There are certain Republican beliefs, at least party beliefs, that I tend to agree with, such as personal responsibility, things like that, smaller government, less invasive government. I'm a fan of those things. But the way what's happened with the polarization of thought in this country, I just don't get it, man. We have to be able to have conversations. I was talking the other day. I can find somebody that we completely disagree politically. But if he likes Star Trek or she likes Star Trek or they like Star Trek, I can still have a conversation with them. I can. And we can talk about Star Trek. Eventually, we'll probably come to blows over our political ideology over a certain episode or two. But Simon, if I was a person of color, I would be perpetually angry in this country. I mean, I'd find something to do that would quell that anger. But I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that it. But then again, I don't hold with the idea of, I've always thought, in my mind, it depends. Like I said, when I went to South Korea, There was no white privilege in South Korea. And it's very funny because I think all of these kinds of discussions we have to start thinking about ourselves as a race that inhabits the planet Earth. And the problem is when you're standing in your one place and you're not going around, you're not examining the planet Earth, and you only are sticking around and you only see things from an American perspective, it's limiting. And people would say, well, Rob, I'm only going to live in America. Only 65% of our population even have passports, or 65% of our population don't have passports. So what about all those people? And I'm like, well, okay, but I don't know. I just don't get it. But yeah, I understand. I look, as a Star Trek fan and as a futurist, I believe that we should all be living in a world that we're looking toward the future. Like, how do we want to make sure that we're going to get there? Like, I would like to see, I'm not going to be here to see it, but I would like to believe in 2 and 3 and 4 and 500 years, we will have a Star Trek future. We will have things that we can be proud of. And I'll tell you, frankly, the Great Pyramids were ancient at the height of Rome's power. They were already 2,000 years old. That's amazing to me. Now we look at the Great Pyramids, they're 4,000 years old now. The Great Pyramids are 4,000 years. We can look, and we don't even know how they made them. And I look at that and I think to myself, that's what we should look at. We should leave a legacy that human beings 4,000 years hence should marvel at us. They're not going to marvel at us right now. We're not doing many marvelous things. Some of us are. What SpaceX is doing is, I think, leading us into a marvelous future if we get there. What Elon Musk's company is doing with, say, batteries. What other, some kid who just figures out a way to clean up the plastic in the oceans. Why aren't we always doing things like that? Why aren't we moving forward? Like, why aren't we doing things that are cool and moving us all forward? That's what I think we should be doing. But yes, it's frustrating that I think for the rest of my life, I'm going to have to spend literally the rest of my life. I thought I'd be living in a future society where cars were flying around. It's amazing because we got amazing technology, but the way people are treating each other is certainly not rather evolved. I guess we're going to have to end up finding out what it really is like to live in the post-atomic horror of World War III, which is a bummer. Ricky Burnett, good last name, Ricky. One of two. When I was 32, I worked for the company that invented the vinyl billboard wrap. My boss was 60. I would tell him stories from my work life, and one day he said, "Kid, you're too damn young to have so many stories. I've been full-time since I was 6. Ricky goes on to say, I've had more jobs in my life, sometimes 3 at a time. I had gone from 6 to 60 before I didn't have a job of some sort. At 60, I was told I was too experienced, so I stay home to care for my disabled son. I have a lot of stories. Should I write? Yes, Ricky, you should. You should write. And you know what? You have the tools right now. You're on the tools right now that you start a blog. And better yet, you know what? If you're a good storyteller, start a YouTube channel. Tell all these stories. Absolutely tell all of these stories. Because I would. I think that's a cool thing to do. Jeff Yerke. And how are you and the Mrs. Jeff? Hi, Rob. Mrs. Yerke and I pivoted to film noir last night, and we watched Henry Hathaway's 1947 Kiss of Death. Richard Widmark is great in that. Talk about tense. It features a great turn by very young Richard Widmark as a psychopath. Tommy Duo. Absolutely brilliant. Live long and prosper, Jeff. You are correct, sir. I like Kiss of Death. It's great. I think is that on Criterion? I don't know. Julius is here. Julius Goodwin. By the way, Julius, allow me to thank you for Az's. That was a very nice tip you gave to Az yesterday on our show. It did not go unnoticed by me. Thank you very much. Julius Goodwin said, just curious, on the off chance aliens do actually show up for this festival, how in the world are you going to handle First Contact? Hopefully, it will involve a Vulcan peace sign and a vintage bottle of Knocking Point wine. Well, Julius, let me tell you. If, in fact, we do get a submission, an extraterrestrial submission for our film festival, and to be honest, it's 2020, so I believe that if any year could get, if we could garner, if there's a possibility to get a submission into the Intergalactic Film Festival, it's this year, and it wouldn't surprise me. But how would I handle First Contact? I mean, it might not necessarily be First Contact. It might be some kind of an anonymous submission. But what I would like to do is, clearly, if we do receive a piece of cinema from an alien civilization, I would first ask them. I guess I'd want to know if it's, did they have a silent era, and did they move into color? Like, how do they begin? I mean, I don't know. Maybe cinema, telling stories through pictures, is the universal language, and I might not understand what we're seeing. We might not be able to talk with them, but I think what'll be really interesting is we've got a great crack team of judges, both made up of professional people and imagination connoisseurs, and I'll be telling you more about who is going to join our judging staff. But hopefully I'll handle it well, and I will, make a few phone calls and call some people like who might be interested. Like, if in fact we do receive an extraterrestrial submission, I will be calling Elon Musk. I will be calling some other great brains to say deal with this. Because how could I not? That'll be interesting. And Julius, I hope we will be drinking Knocking Point wine together with the aliens. How cool would that be? Simon sends in a tip and says, sorry for the rage. Me venting about Trump and Brooks Russell Heather of No BS YouTube channel. And no, I'm not plugging his hate channel. But I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. By the way, that's from Network, and if you haven't seen Network, you should. Simon, it sounds like you have. Simon, I would ask you this question, though. What are you going to do with that anger? And I think one of the problems is, I think a lot of us are angry. We're sitting at home angry, and we don't have any way to vent, or, I would ask you, do something with that anger. Let that anger be the wind that's going to blow your solar sail and take you somewhere. Turn that anger into something beneficial. I don't know what that might be, because everybody's different, but see where it takes you. See where you wind up. And why not make a film? Why not take your anger and make a film and enter it into the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival? Tell us that story. Tell us the story, even if you're ranting. You can make a film by just ranting. You could put your face on camera, rant into the camera, and then cover it with B-roll. Suddenly start juxtaposing images of yourself and what you're saying, and then cut images over the top. You're going to have a film. Submit it. Take your creativity. Take that anger, convert it into something, and make a film. See what you come up with. I think that'd be kind of neat. Justin Tonner says, hi, Rob. My friends and I welcomed the start of October last night with a horror double bill of the 1973s. Ooh. The Wicker Man and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Even though this is a DVD, I couldn't get rid of this because it's so dope. This is the Anchor Bay. Let me give you a closer look at this. This is the Anchor Bay. It's a wood box. It's number 584 out of, they made 50,000. Well, there's a lot of these out there. There's 50,000 of these. So it's not really, I guess, any collectible, but it's pretty cool. It came with these cards, like the one sheet and stuff. And I love The Wicker Man. I love Halloween 3. I have the novelization. Right there. You can see it right there. Halloween 3. So yeah, what a great double feature. Again, let me just plug Whining About Movies tonight. It's going to be kind of a funny show because I don't know how Elizabeth felt about Phantasm, one of my favorite movies. I don't think she was rather impressed by it, which is sort of too bad. What are you going to do? Oh, wait, I didn't even finish what you're reading. I love both movies. As a bonus, my friend sold me his extra 4K Blu-ray player. Next up, my first 4K TV. Live long and prosper. Yes. My friend Mojo, I'm trying to buy a TV. I want a TV in here. I do not have a TV. I do not have a screen in the Robservatory, but I would like one in here so I can play movies, 4K films, and things like that when I work in here, because I'm here all the time. Ricky Burnett sends in a tip and says, this is for Simon. Simon, I'm an old white dude, and watching a human being shot in the back, shot numerous times, shot while running, choked, shot while in bed, and more literally, had me in tears. I do what I can, by voting, and I donate where I can. Ricky, why don't you make a film? Come on, man. Let's do it. Tell your story. Make a film. Tell us a story about your work. I think it'd be fun. I know not everybody can make a movie, but try your hand at it. Try your hand at it. I think it'd be kind of cool. Omar94 is here. Omar94 says, "Hey, Rob, I'm sure you and others listening will be mixed on what I'm about to say, but here goes. I think blockbusters are no longer as exciting and entertaining as they once were. When I watch modern-day blockbusters like the MCU movies, the Star Wars sequel trilogy, I don't generally find them to be that exciting. There were some moments which got me excited, like when Force Awakens started, we saw the opening with A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far Away and the Star Wars logo with John Williams' score, and the crawl. Other exciting moments were like the camera panning around the Avengers in Avengers 1 or the final battle in Avengers Endgame. However, they're not something I'll really think about that much after seeing it. When I watch an MCU movie, for example, I only really need to see it once, as I don't find myself wanting to see it on a regular basis with repeat viewings. I think the reason I feel this way is because I think modern-day blockbusters are too generic and predictable, so I don't get that excited when something happens. That's fair. However, when I watch older blockbusters, I find those to be far more exciting, entertaining, and they have this charm to them which makes them rewatchable for me. For example, I still get really excited when I watch something like the first Die Hard, even though I've seen it countless times. John McTiernan, man. I still find that movie to have incredibly exciting and suspenseful moments, like when Alan Rickman yells, "blow the roof," and Bruce Willis jumps in slow motion off the roof of the building, and it explodes. Or when Rickman falls to his death and it's in slow motion. The same thing happens when I watch something like A New Hope. I still get really excited when I see the final space battle when the Death Star blows up. Raiders of the Lost Ark is like that with the whole opening sequence, or at the end when the melting face happens. Jurassic Park's like that too, when the dinosaurs are shown for the first time and Richard Attenborough says, welcome to Jurassic Park. Or later when we're anticipating the T-Rex to show up and we see the water shaking. Plenty of other older blockbusters have exciting moments like that and have a charm to them which makes them rewatchable. I just don't see that with modern-day blockbusters. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I agree with you, but I think, you know what? Chalk it up to authorship. It's all authorship. You know, as good as I like the MCU movies, I love watching Infinity War. I can watch the first 20 minutes of that movie. I love that movie because it's all the characters. I love seeing the characters. I love seeing Thanos on the Asgardian ship. I love seeing Loki and Thor. I love that. I love the character bits. I can't believe I'm seeing it. Then I love the whole business in New York when Obsidian Maw, that's not his name. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. When they show up, the Black Order, whatever, shows up, and I love all that. And Doctor Strange, I think it's fun, but I think what you're talking about is authorship. Big movies now are made by committee, and there is less of a personal touch in them. I mean, Die Hard is a movie that lives and dies with McTiernan's direction. And a lot of the great blockbusters, I mean, you think about it, whether Paul Verhoeven was making RoboCop, well, that's not really a blockbuster, but RoboCop, Total Recall, or Basic Instinct, I mean, these are all directorial movies, and now, even the MCU, they're committee movies. And that's what I think you're responding to. They are absolutely committee movies. Let's see, I got one more today, and one I'm going to save for tomorrow. Christopher McCulloch's here. I always like his letters. Mr. Burnett. We got an interesting conversation on why it's difficult to adapt video games to film. That and its inverse. Why are there no good video games based on a licensed property? Is a topic that makes the rounds of nerddom every so often. The reason given by you, video game narratives are designed to support the gameplay, is a valid one. But it discounts some of my favorite genres of video games, the role-playing game and the adventure game. Why role-playing games aren't easily adapted to movies is easy to explain. A large part of the draw is giving the player agency. That's absolutely true. Most modern Western RPGs give the player a role in the outcome of the narrative. Beyond you won, you died, game over. But depending on your choice of character class and style of play, no two games of a linear RPG will be the same either, making less interesting any trapped in amber iteration on film. This is a great point. This is absolutely true. Possibly even frustrating the carryover audience as they experience a version of the game with their agency taken away. Very true. The first letter I ever wrote into you was on Mass Effect, a series of games that is built around making tough decisions and dealing with their consequences, Any potential Mass Effect movie would be built around the same compelling dynamic, but unlike when playing a computer game, wouldn't give you the luxury of a save to return to just to explore the other worlds you could have created. This wouldn't make any Mass Effect show bad, it would merely make it a show. You're right, and it would be removing part of the whole appeal of the IP in the first place. Speaking of exploring worlds you've created, Myst and its sequel Riven are probably the most famous examples of the second genre. Adventure games are pretty much where video games start. Not being a video game historian, it's typically Pong and Zork where the conversation begins, and these two games still seem to delineate the spectrum of games in the medium, the fast-paced, graphically conscious end, Pong, and the deliberate puzzle and narrative-focused end, Zork. I have a long history with adventure games, from Sierra's Quest games to the very tongue-in-cheek LucasArts games. Young Christopher played many and finished none. These games were narratives that, much like Myth, revolved around the hero using cunning to overcome the obstacles put in his way. Cunning was in short supply for me in the early years, coupled with the trend in adventure games to apply moon logic to puzzle solutions to keep me from seeing the end of many of these games until much later in my life. Not all games had to stoop to this level of puzzle crafting. Myst was the first time I learned of the musical octaves. Riven, the first time I encountered the concept of a duodecimal counting system. The difference between RPGs and adventure games, though, is that the player agency isn't an obstacle to their adaptation. Most aren't so different from visual novels. Some are linked by little more than theme and artistic style, perfect for adaptation. Even Moon Logic, which was a frustrating impediment to the narrative, easily becomes a memorable feature in a story if your input isn't driving. There are 6 Space Quest games. They are a great pastiche of science fiction tropes, and there's no reason that 7, 8, and 9 couldn't be TV shows, except that they're owned by Disney, I think. Looking at a list of movies adapted from video games, a trend is clear. Tomb Raider, Resident Evil, Doom, Max Payne, Prince of Persia, Assassin's Creed, they're all based on games where the narrative serves mostly as a premise for exquisite sex and wholesome violence. The reason is clear, too. They're all the most successful type of video game, and therein lies the rub. What makes a good video game doesn't always make a good movie. Long corridors of enemies to traverse on your way to some inane MacGuffin is the level of storytelling in most of these games, but doesn't make for a compelling narrative. Figuring out the ancient Aztec language in order to bypass Baroque demise on your way to the Fountain of Youth, or working your way through the increasingly complex security failsafes of a fully automated city in order to undo its dystopian AI controller with a logical paradox. Those are adventure games, and they sound like good movies, too. Christopher, I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite letter on the Robservations. P.S. You did an interview with Melinda Snodgrass where she mentioned Mass Effect as being good sci-fi. So while I pointedly won't badger you to give this excellent and worthy of your time game a shot, I would hope that her recommendation is endorsement enough. I've always wanted to play Mass Effect. P.P.S. I've had a letter about Myst and Riven on the back burner for a while. Hopefully I'll have put it together in the near future, possibly next year. Myst came out at such a unique time in gaming, one of those brief moments when a creator was involved in every aspect of its making. But in the meantime, I'd recommend anyone interested to watch Ars Technica's video on the making of Myst, featuring co-creator Rand Miller. Well, you should write that letter, because the television series Myst is being co-created by, or created by, well, our first judge here at the Intergalactic Film Festival. Let me put this in the live chat, by the way. Interesting. I am going to watch this video, and I'm going to send this video to Ashley, which is very cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, kind souls, all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, I'm bringing an end to episode 526 of Robservations, the show about something. Join me and Elizabeth on Elizaviews at 7 o'clock tonight for our inaugural first Halloween show, where we're going to be talking about Don Coscarelli's Phantasm with the famous ad line, "If this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead." I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, join us on Elizaviews tonight, and that's fantastic. I want to thank everybody that has sent in tips and has supported the channel through Super Chats and all that. Thank you very much. I want to thank my moderators, Greg Smith, Joshua Levesque is here. I don't know if anyone else is here. Joshua and Greg are here. Maybe you're the only ones here. Robert Pariso is here. Hello, Robert. That's good to see you here. Thank you very much. And I think that's it as I go back. I know this chat got a little political. I would assume that we're going to get political all the way up to the election. But here's the thing, people. Why do you have to get mad? Why can't we talk about politics as a thing? Like, why do we always have to get mad? I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't understand. I don't understand it. If you like Singing in the Rain, we need American democracy is based on healthy, informed debate. So anyway, I want to appreciate the letter writers. Interesting stuff today. I especially like that letter about God loves, man kills. So thanks, Mr. Gant, for that one. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And I will be back on the John Campea Show tomorrow. I'll be back here on Robservations tomorrow. And I do believe we're going to do another whining about movies tomorrow, but I don't know what that movie is. We will tell you soon. And hopefully later today, you'll be able to go get entry forms on the website for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And yes, the fee is $25. I know, it's $25. I know. But it's going to be worth it. We got to buy trophies, man. We got to subsidize this festival somehow. I'm already paying out of pocket. And if we only get like 5 entries, well, there you go. I'll be way out of pocket then. We'll see. I can't wait. And you will be seeing, I should mention, you are going to be seeing the first entry at noon Saturday. It goes up noon Saturday. For those of you who are Patrick Keller and Dieter Bastian and Mia Keller fans, The Secret Exchange 2, Broken Promises, will be available to watch at noon on Saturday on its own. It'll be on its own on Saturday on the Burnettwork. So it's our second world premiere, and it's our second world premiere, and it's a sequel. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will enjoy that, because it's pretty fun. It's really fun, actually, and I'm really excited. I said to Dieter, I said, dude, I do expect by the end of the festival that you will enter the third part of the the trilogy. We'll see. I guess the third one wouldn't be called Broken Promises. The Secret Exchange 2, Broken Promises. What would the Secret Exchange 3 be? I don't even know. But anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. And as always, have a better day. If I can figure out how to work this. Man, I think this is going to be the last hottest day of the year because, woo boy, it is hot.